There's one aspect of the Stranger Things finale that I absolutely hated for reasons I've seen nobody else articulate. I honestly don't even hate the episode or season 5. I liked them more than I disliked them. But there's one creative choice that I despise for reasons that go beyond personal preference. I'm talking about Elle's choice to end things that serves as the ending of Stranger Things, and the fact that it's even framed as a choice. I generally think that using euphemisms like ending things is disrespectful to survivors of suicide like myself because they perpetuate stigma by not addressing the topic with the frankness and severity it requires. But in this case, I'm using it because it has a double meaning, as it also serves as the plot point that ends the show. If you somehow don't know what I'm talking about, here's some context. In the Stranger Things finale, the show's main protagonist, a girl with supernatural abilities named 11, makes a decision. In the behind-the-scenes documentary about the creation of Season 5, the showrunners, the Duffer Brothers, specifically describe this choice as, quote, killing herself. This idea is first introduced in a conversation with Callie, another child with superpowers, about the source of their powers. We already knew they were created in a government program that was designed to birth children with unnatural abilities. Callie explains that all of the children who grew up in that program were born because their pregnant mothers were infused with the blood of Henry Creel, the first child with superpowers, who is also known as Vecna or One. Callie tells 11 this because the military has resurrected this program in the time since the death of its original creator, Dr. Brenner/Papa. Throughout the season, the military has been trying to capture 11 because she was the only child Brenner's program created who was as powerful as Henry, so they want her blood to create a new generation of children with superpowers. This is framed as an iteration of the trolley problem. Is the sacrifice of one life worth it if it saves dozens of others? In this case, Callie wants to stay behind in the abyss, the dimension the Mind Flayer is from, after closing the gate Vecna is using to merge the two worlds, so that the government cannot recapture Elle and use her blood to create more superpowered children. However, Elle's adoptive father, Hopper, catches wind of this plan and tries to convince Elle to not do it. He thinks that she deserves the chance to live a normal life free from the pain, suffering, and isolation that was her childhood prior to escaping Brenner's lab during season 1. However, Elle does not want her dad interfering, so she tells him, and I quote, "I need you to trust me to make the right choice." Thus, Stranger Things season 5 frames this potential suicide as a legitimate choice that Elle should be given the autonomy to make on her own. Callie is killed by soldiers in the middle of the finale, and in the end it seems like 11 has chosen not to die, as she returns to the normal world with her friends. However, in the final moment of climax in the entire show, as they return through the gate, Elle, her friends, and her family are caught by the military. As a result, Elle flees back into the gate and says goodbye to Mike as it closes, the implication being that she's killed as the connection between the abyss and our world is severed, destroying the Upside Down. The show flashes forward to Mike and his friend's high school graduation, and ends on a more hopeful note, as Mike tells his friends his theory that Callie didn't actually die, and she created an illusion to conceal Elle escaping into our world, free to live a life outside the clutches of the government, but at the cost of convincing her friends and family she's dead. The evidence for this theory is that Elle wouldn't have been able to use her powers due to the military's jamming device, which was active when she made her choice. Nevertheless, she's able to jump into Mike's mind and use it to talk to him. Elle also specifically tells Mike to explain her choice to her friends in the moment, and this theory is the first time we see Mike provide these friends with an explanation. The finale ends ambiguously. It's unclear if Elle is dead or alive, but if she is alive, she won't have the opportunity to live a life with the family who helped save her from the government's exploitation. This also retroactively undoes the choice Eleven made in Season 2 to choose her found family in Hawkins over living with Collie's group, who seeks to get revenge on people involved in Brenner's project. In that season, she chose to stay despite the potential consequences from the government. She seemingly abandons this choice in Season 5. Depictions of heroic self-sacrifice that result in death are difficult to do correctly. The reason for this is that if you frame it in the wrong way, like I think the creators of Stranger Things have with Eleven, there's the possibility of glorifying suicide, which is disrespectful to people who have lost loved ones to suicide or struggle with suicidal ideation and past attempts. I fall under both of those criteria, making me particularly sensitive to this issue, but I also think it makes me the right person to talk about this because I'm familiar with it from all sides. By framing the suicide of Elle as a choice she deserves autonomy to make, the creators of Stranger Things, whether intentionally or not, are glorifying the choice to kill oneself by using it as a source of narrative apotheosis. Granted, there are situations where things one might consider suicide would be somewhat justified, the main example being terminally ill patients for whom medical intervention will be invasive and just prolong their suffering. In that scenario, ceasing life-saving measures and making the patient comfortable, if that's what they specifically want to do, is justified, because the quality of life that's being saved is quite poor. However, Elle is quite possibly the exact opposite case. She's still a teenager with her whole life ahead of her, who won't be killed if she doesn't make this choice. The writers of Stranger Things have constructed a scenario where it seems like it would be impossible to have a normal life. The government will always want more from her and may try to kidnap her and run experiments on her again. However, this is a situation purely of the writer's construction. If we think logically about what we've seen in previous seasons, there's no real reason for Brenner's program to be restarted. The Soviet Union is already in decline and will collapse in less than 4 years, rendering any Cold War reasons for this program obsolete. Eleven's found family has key evidence about Brenner's program that they could leak to the press to force the government to release Eleven if she's recaptured. Dustin has Brenner's lab notebook from 1983, which could be a huge thing to hold over the heads of the government to force them to negotiate. Eleven's friends have also successfully leaked information about the program to the press to force the cessation of this research in previous seasons. This is how Season 2 ends. Eleven not being able to have a normal life is anything but a certainty. The whole scenario is specifically of the writers' contrivance to create a situation where Eleven is removed from the lives of her friends. They say as much in the documentary and post-finale interviews, framing Elle's death as equivalent to magic leaving the world at the end of The Lord of the Rings. For some reason, they think that in order to achieve this goal, Eleven cannot be allowed to live because she's too magical and her friends can't grow up if that magic still exists. This effectively removes any sense of agency from Eleven in favor of furthering her friend's character development, which also feels pretty bad when we're talking about a depiction of suicide. The life lost in a completed suicide attempt is not something that will help their loved ones grow. It's a potential life cut short because a disease of the brain has convinced them their only option is death. Yes, it's possible that Eleven didn't die, which makes this whole scenario slightly less bad, but the framing is still quite suspect because it's left as a possibility. Alternatively, the writers could have easily reused the idea of Eleven losing her powers again like she did at the end of Season 3 to allow her to continue living even after the magic leaves the world. This, I would argue, is the most natural way to do a Lord of the Rings style ending to Stranger Things. 11 choosing to end things is completely unnecessary. There are scenarios where someone can die to protect the people they care about, but most of the time they're still trying to live as they die. Instead of killing themselves, they're killed by external forces, like a fire that kills a fireman trying to rescue as many people from the blaze, or a soldier who saves their unit at the cost of their life. In those situations, there's always a possibility that that person will live. They are not choosing to end their own life. They're choosing to protect other people at high risk of death. The distinction may seem minor, but I think it's pretty important. They're still fighting to live until their last moment. This is in contrast to a scenario where someone kills themselves directly. In the latter, which is what is depicted by Stranger Things, they're choosing to die and actively choosing not to live. This choice might save people, but I would argue if it's valorized, the storytellers have glorified suicide. The glorification of suicide is not merely a respect issue. It can lead real people to more readily consider suicide as an option. This is a phenomenon that's happened in the past with other shows like 13 Reasons Why, which is the most egregious example. This is well documented in the medical literature, and I can anecdotally attest to why it happens. Glorification can be a motivator for making a plan or attempt because it creates a narrative that justifies suicide by giving it a sense of purpose or meaning. Often these media properties are doing this unintentionally and the creators wouldn't want this impact, but in my opinion it's still quite reckless, as intent matters far less than actual impact upon real people. Stranger Things is a far less egregious example of this than a show like 13 Reasons Why. However, I still think it has the possibility to have this effect. Any depiction of glorified suicide can. Al's choice is also framed drastically differently to previous depictions of suicide in Stranger Things. In Season 4, Max and the other teens Vecna targets struggle with suicidal thoughts caused by their trauma. Vecna feeds on their trauma and uses it as part of his scheme to reopen the connection between the Upside Down and our world, by using the murders of each of these teens as a way to create new rifts that work towards a larger gate, which is constructed in the season finale. In particular, as Max is targeted, she admits that Vecna is right, that she does sometimes want to kill herself because she feels guilty about the death of her stepbrother Billy and wishes she had died instead. This is a very realistic depiction of a very specific type of suicidal ideation prompted by the grief of losing someone close to you. I have also experienced this line of ideation myself after losing a family friend to suicide shortly after a failed attempt that I made. In Season 4, Max's arc is about resisting suicide. Max's friends want to help her find a way to live by escaping Vecna's curse. They discover that music can break Vecna's psychic illusions and help his victims escape. The song Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush is used to save Max, which has a deep thematic meaning. The song's lyrics are about the singer trading places with someone they love via a deal with God to better understand them. This is what Max wishes she could do with Billy. When she's feeling suicidal, she wishes that God would allow her to trade places with Billy and have the Mind Flayer kill her instead of her brother, taking his place. This also connects to the Season 3 finale where Eleven enters Billy's mind and sees his happiest memories of his mother, thus learning to understand what he's going through. She has effectively done what Kate Bush is singing about, and by proxy helped Max do the same, prompting Max's guilt over Billy's death. That the song is what saves Max from Vecna can be interpreted as her friends trading places with her to understand her suicidal suicidal ideation, and using that information to help bring her back from the brink and save her life. Unfortunately, to prevent Vecna from killing again, they have to bait him by letting him back into Max's mind so that he can be killed while he's vulnerable. The plan doesn't work and he kills Max. However, Elle is also in Max's mind and uses her powers to save Max's life, bringing her back from the dead after a few seconds of brain death. Elle uses her friendship with Max to save her from suicide, which results in a coma rather than death after her resurrection. This also mirrors the significant medical consequences that can result from a failed suicide attempt. In this situation, Vecna represents suicidal thoughts and trauma. The song represents connecting with your family and loved ones who can bring you back from the brink of a suicide attempt. And Max's death and imminent resurrection represents a suicide attempt. This powerful metaphor for saving someone from suicide is a big part of why Stranger Things Season 4 is my favorite season of the show. It served as a powerful reminder to me that whenever I'm feeling suicidal, I can reach out to my friends and family because they want to understand what I'm going through and will do what it takes to help stop me from attempting again. Max's story shows quite artfully how our relationships with loved ones can save someone from suicide. Seeing Elle's choice play out makes me think that the writers didn't understand what they'd actually done with suicide in Season 4, because the message of Season 5 feels like the exact opposite. It feels like something that my brain would conjure up when I'm suicidal. My friends and family will be burdened by my presence if I continue living. No matter what we do, I cannot escape my past. Thus, ending my life is the only escape and way to unburden the people that I care about. However, having had someone I care about kill themselves, I know that suicide doesn't unburden those you care about. It's actually quite the opposite. Your death can be a source of pain and sadness and grief that follows them for the rest of their lives. Thus, if you truly care about the people in your life, you shouldn't kill yourself. You should try to work on your problems and find a way to live as happy a life as possible with them, because they'd much rather have a life that's imperfect, but where you're still alive, than one where you're dead. Suicide is not a choice we should allow people to convince themselves is okay. It's never okay. It's always possible that things will get better, even if things are difficult. This is why I think it's important to be careful about how we depict suicide in the media. We should be critical of depictions that glorify suicide and reject them. It's always possible that things will get better, even if things are difficult. If you're listening to this and are suicidal, please know that I care about you and wouldn't want you to die. I know how difficult those feelings and those thoughts can be. My Discord DMs are always open, and if you need someone to listen to you during a difficult time so that you feel less alone, I'm willing to listen. I don't want you to end things before they've even began. I will also leave some resources in the description that are designed to help suicidal people. I wish the writers of Stranger Things would have understood the implications of the way they framed Elle's choice in Season 5, and understood how it contradicts the message of Season 4. Elle's ending will forever be something that stains Stranger Things for me. It doesn't completely ruin the rest of the show, because at least Season 4 understands that it's wrong, but it does tarnish the luster of a show that I love. Like Elle's friends and family, I wish things would have ended differently.